I think the scariest part of being in a cult is that everybody on the outside world knows that you're in a cult, but you don't. Like me, when I was in a high control, high demand religion, Jehovah's Witnesses, I did not realize that I was. I did not see what other people were seeing. And even when I began to suspect that it was a cult, it took me a couple years to accept that it was a cult. I bring this up because there's a few new trendy cult leaders out there, and I don't get their appeal, to be quite frankly.
Okay.
That wasn't a cult leader, that was just a callback. But for example, when I see people who are really big fans of this guy, or this guy, or this guy, I just find them so viscerally unappealing on a vibes level before we even get to the substance of what they're saying, which I also disagree with. And it's easy for me to get smug about that, about how obvious it is that these guys are manipulative. It's easy for me to be smug in general, and this channel is a testament to that. But then, I gotta check myself because I used to be a fan of this guy.
Be young children as to badness. Like children, we don't want to gain knowledge or experience in what is bad. For example, when it comes to pornography.
That guy is Stephen Lett. He's one of the governing body members of Jehovah's Witnesses. I believed that this guy was definitely 100% appointed by Jesus Christ to lead the only true religion on earth today.
They never lie or deceive us. We can have absolute trust in the governing body.
Not only did I believe that this guy had no ulterior motives at all, I thought that he only ever told the truth. If this guy was talking on camera, it was definitely true. So, if you've never been a Jehovah's Witness, just check out this clip of this guy and kind of let me know what your thoughts on the vibe is real quick.
In fact, in order to make sexual immorality appear more innocent, it's often euphemized. Sexual perversion, such as homosexuality, is called an alternative lifestyle. One so-called expert said, "It's simply like being left-handed."
Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think probably everybody who clicked on this video, if you weren't a Jehovah's Witness, you are disgusted and repelled by Stephen Lett. Not only because of what he's saying, but the everything about how he talks, like his what if Goofy was a preschool teacher tone of voice, his totally inhuman way of expressing his face, or as Stephen Lett will call it in this exact video we're about to dissect, a voluminous face.
Voluminous facial expressions are not a requirement.
Now that I've been out for a few years and deconstructed my Jehovah's Witness beliefs, I see what you see. I can now only see that this guy is a creepy con man with a freaky face.
And that has indeed been evidence of Jehovah's and the governing body's love for little children.
But I refused to let myself see that. I was a little weirded out by how he talked, but I suppressed it. I stuffed it down.
I'll just bury it down inside.
Bury it deep down in there and never bring it up again.
Even when he was asking me for money, a thing that Stephen Lett does a lot, actually.
But now we ask, how can we imitate Jehovah's generosity in giving physical gifts? A puppy might make a fine gift to a young one living in a rural setting, but it's a terrible gift to a Bethelite.
As I mentioned, Stephen Lett is one of 10 governing body members at the top of the JW pyramid scheme / legitimate religion with charitable status. The group has a deca-pope, like the board from Severance. There's 10 of them is what I'm saying, but Lett is hosting JW Broadcasting this month, which can only mean one thing. It's pledge drive season.
In doing the math, we found that the amount of money flowing out will be much greater than the amount of money that we have coming in at this time.
And I know valuable things, that can mean like your time and you being nice to people, but he means money. He's talking about money.
In addition to helping brothers in need directly, we can indirectly help them by making donations to the worldwide work. The governing body prayerfully strives to use wisely these precious, dedicated funds.
For whatever reason, Stephen Lett tends to be the guy that the group trots out on camera when the leadership needs to address some really sensitive subject, like the widespread cover-ups of pedophilia within the group.
Another way we can contribute to the oneness, rejecting false stories that are designed to separate us from Jehovah's organization. As an example, think about the apostate-driven lies and dishonesties that Jehovah's organization is permissive toward pedophiles. I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it?
They brought this guy out more than once on purpose to talk about that issue.
The faithful slave protects pedophiles.
Now, this is just one man's opinion, but I think if this is your company's closer, your company has got problems. But Stephen Lett is also on the board of directors, so there's only so much anyone can do. I mean, everybody who's working on the set of JW Broadcasting is doing so for free because they work for these guys, the governing body.
It is evident that JW Broadcasting has Jehovah's blessing. Those involved in preparing the studio, the equipment, and the content all said that they could feel Jehovah's hand directing every step, every decision, every day.
But anyway, another sensitive subject that he talks about sometimes is money. Unlike some people in the organization, as Lett pointed out on his first talk on this subject a few years ago, he is not shy about this matter.
As you might have sensed, I am not shy about this subject.
Lett isn't shy about a lot of things, foreshadowing, but yes, he does indeed to be quite comfortable gaslighting members into giving him legal tender. This sort of thing won't appear strange to folks who have never been a Jehovah's Witness. You have seen a dozen other videos of preachers and televangelists overtly asking for cash. But Jehovah's Witnesses' whole deal is that they have the truth. They are not like other churches of Satan's world who beg or coerce their members to donate. However,
we in no way want to be categorized with other organizations, religious and otherwise, that coerce their supporters to donate. However,
and here, once again, Stephen Lett is back to remind Jehovah's Witnesses, who, if they're doing everything right, are supposed to be pretty poor anyway, to give him some more money, please.
But now we ask, how can we imitate Jehovah's generosity in giving physical gifts?
Like, yeah, okay, maybe you gave us some money in the past, but you should really be giving us money all the time. And that's not just me saying that. It's Bible.
It's Bible.
Let's let Stephen explain this. I'm sorry.
Please think about this. Jehovah's physical gifts, such as the rain, sunshine, and oxygen, are recurring. What's one way to imitate this aspect of Jehovah's giving? Well, 1 Corinthians 16:2 says, "On the first day of every week, each of you should set something aside according to his own means."
In harmony with this scriptural principle, many have chosen to set something aside each month by scheduling recurring online donations.
See, I told you, it's right there in ink. Now, some may feel like this verse in 1 Corinthians is direction from the Apostle Paul to that specific congregation in Corinth centuries ago, but no, you're wrong. This is a Bible principle. You see, principle is a fun Watchtower word that can be used instead of the word rule. Jehovah's Witnesses are not bound by some list of rules, okay? They are bound by principles and covenants and commandments and laws, but not rules.
Now, we don't need rules for which movies to watch, which songs to listen to, or what clothes we can wear. If we're paying attention when we're reading the Bible, we train our conscience with Bible principles so we can make such decisions without needing a long list of rules.
Those are for false, fake religions who say ridiculous things, like that they're right and you should give money to them instead. And like, when you really think about it, the rain is consistent, and that's a gift from God, so maybe our gifts of God should also be consistent like the rain.
Jehovah's physical gifts, such as the rain, sunshine, and oxygen, are recurring online donations.
Do I need to debunk this part? I don't know. I think this is pretty nakedly manipulative, but I mean, we're here. Okay, You've convinced me. Let's really think about what happened here in terms of logic and reasoning.
Logically,
To Jehovah's Witnesses, some of Paul's commandments, like that women are to remain silent in the congregation, are not principles. Those, you gotta be really careful with the wording of that one. Those are very complicated and specific to the time, and we can pretty much just ignore it. I mean, we don't want women to be silent. We don't want them to have any power or influence or status in the congregation over a man. They can never have any authority over a man whatsoever, but they can talk. They can talk sometimes if they raise their hands. But this verse is definitely a principle, and no, he is not going to explain why he knows this and why this verse is not another thing that just applied to that congregation one time, so we don't need to worry about that as modern day Jehovah's Witnesses. Nope, he just says it's a principle. I mean, what are you going to do? Not believe him? What other kind of things are you going to start not believing when the governing body says it? That's a slippery slope. But let's just give him this. Let's just say, yeah, he's right. This is a principle. And the principle is you should regularly give valuable things to Jehovah. And valuable things means money. And the best way to get money to Jehovah is by using the jw.org website and putting in your debit card information, just like they did in Corinth. This is something I've noticed in the group a lot lately. They don't really bother explaining their reasoning for anything anymore. And that did not used to be the case. Back in my day, a thing I find myself saying more and more often, we had this book called Reasoning from the Scriptures. The whole thing was, at least the facade of it was supposed to make us feel like we were really reasoning. Now, what it is in practice is like an MLM handbook. What if the client says this? Well, maybe you could say this. That's kind of all it is. But it gave the illusion of reasoning. Not so with modern JW broadcasts.
And how true that is. But it is just so true. And this is so true. And isn't that how we feel?
I'm not saying this to like be defensive of myself. I mean, it was just as obviously not true then. But it does strike me that the cult leaders are putting in less effort but demanding even more loyalty. These days, it's unlikely that you will hear reasoning from the scriptures. They just assert that something is true. We were watching this live Jehovah's Witness convention on a stream recently. Some member sent me a link, and we saw a governing body helper, another leader higher up in the church, give this talk where he was really brazen about this, and it caught me off guard.
Jehovah's Witnesses speak of their organization or their religion as the truth. Now, we're not bragging. We're not trying to exalt ourselves over others. It just happens to be that's what it is. It's the truth.
Hey, it's not bragging if it's true. Also, later in this August broadcast, a governing body helper named John Ekron gives a talk with a tortured title, What Are the Benefits of Knowing That Jehovah Sees All the Good We Do?
So how can we benefit from knowing that Jehovah sees all the good that we do?
John Ekron is not going to explain the foundation of his premise, how it's possible for a person to know that Jehovah sees anything anyone does, because how do we even know God exists? No, of course not, because that's not a thing that can be proven. So he's just going to skip that. It's just,
you already know this thing, and you know that it's true, so what are the benefits of knowing the thing you already know?
Well, what lesson is there for us in that? It's very comforting. Jehovah sees all the good that we do, and nothing good that we do is missed by him.
Well, how can knowing that Jehovah sees all the good that we do help us when we're falsely accused?
At a certain point, a group like this does not have any new information to give you, so they're just going to keep reminding you how wonderful it is that they already taught you all the stuff that is the truth. For more examples of bold, unsubstantiated claims, bold claims those, we can also look back at the beginning of this broadcast. Now, some might call this a nitpick, so just to be safe, we're going to go into a certain corner we go into sometimes.
Why is it necessary to be so picky, to be so fussy?
But I don't feel like moving my body, so I'm going to film it in the same corner. Right off the bat, Lett says a bunch of stuff about the Bible, just rattles it off without so much as reading a scripture. Now, this is a nitpick. I understand that he is doing this because he's speaking to Jehovah's Witnesses who already know the scriptural reason. I understand that he is speaking to a friendly audience who accepts all of his biases going in. Like, he's not really saying this to persuade new people. So I am being nitpicky, but because he doesn't bother to do that, the effect of this, it struck me that, hey, wait, what? Does the Bible say any of that?
Unquestionably, Jehovah God is the most generous giver in the universe. Let's talk about this. Eons and eons ago, Jehovah God was all alone. And even though it's impossible for us to comprehend, he wasn't lonely or lacking anything, but because of love, he generously chose to share the gift of life with others. He decided to become a father, a creator. Logically, he began by creating a son with whom he could directly enjoy fellowship. As we know, this son became known as the Word, as Jehovah's spokesman. But then, at some point in time again, not because of loneliness or lacking anything, but because of love, he chose to further expand his family by creating millions of angelic sons who could also directly associate with him.
Hey, wait, what? Does the Bible say any of that?
The answer is I don't actually care, because I don't believe in the Bible or God, so that's fine, whatever. But this is kind of part of the laziness I'm talking about. He's just really saying a lot of stuff and expecting witnesses to accept it totally, whole cloth. And then when he does read scriptures, he'll just be like, and this one's a principle, so this one applies through all time, including right now, and the principle is give us money. I guess my nitpick is it kind of takes a certain amount of skill to be a good cult leader, to be like a skilled illusionist who can captivate an audience. And other than his voluminous facial expressions, he really doesn't have a lot going on.
Voluminous facial expressions.
Now, to be fair to Jehovah's Witnesses, they could absolutely give you, and I could still give you, the doctrinal explanation for why they know angels are God's sons and Jesus was the first angel created. Like, we could do all that. But that first claim about God not being lonely, where's that coming from?
Jehovah God was all alone. He wasn't lonely or lacking anything, not because of loneliness or lacking anything.
Like, how do you know that, Stephen Lett? It's not like the Bible is like...
And by the way, God was never lonely. He was just totally cool being a lone wolf.
I found this to be a really strange thing to insist upon with no evidence, because wouldn't it make God more relatable if he was lonely and that's why he created humans? Because he was lonely out there in the infinite cosmos by himself and he wanted humans to be his friends? I mean, that's what Stephen Lett's gonna keep saying, that you can be God's friend. That's the whole Jehovah's Witness pitch. You can be God's best friend.
Learn all you can about the Bible. And when you do, you'll make Jehovah your best friend.
But also, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, Jehovah did not need to create you, wasn't lonely, didn't need friends or a girlfriend or a wife or anything. He went straight into being a single dad, and his son was like a clone of him, like exactly like him in every way. Jehovah kind of made a mini-me. Jesus is kind of God's mini-me.
What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us. Blue, 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 blue.
And beyond that, Jehovah did not create you to be equal to him. He doesn't believe in equality. He wants you to be a lower form of life.
Then amazingly, further down the stream of time, because of love, he again chose to expand his family. These children were a lower form of life, but ones who were made in his image and whom he loved deeply.
I find it weird that God is on one hand this master craftsman who loves all his creation equally, but also, there's a hierarchy.
You're saying I play favorites. You're wrong. I love all my children equally. I don't care for Joe.
Yeah, I guess I made puffins. I mean, they're okay. They're not as good as me. I mean, they can't talk or nothing. I don't know, I just made them to be a lower form of life. That's what God sounds like, by the way. I mean, I guess that is in Genesis. God wants humans to have dominion over the beasts of the field. And God wants your cold, hard cash. Well, he doesn't, want it. He just knows that he already deserves it, because you only have money because of God in the first place. So it makes sense to give it back to him.
The important decision we made was to follow the advice of the Apostle Paul, to really put aside a specific value. So we planned, we calculated our costs, analyzed the situation, we prayed on the subject, and then we saw the importance of making a will. Jehovah gave us everything. So I think we're just returning what Jehovah gave us. I've come to realize that in general, that contributions are not a pocket condition, but a heart condition.
I am not shy about this subject.
Well, Lett's lack of shyness on this matter may come from the fact that he's the only governing body member who we know for sure is independently wealthy. The Blue Envelope channel has done several damning deep dives into Stephen Lett's personal finances using publicly available documents and news reports. To summarize, Stephen Lett's brother and extended family were all witnesses in good standing until the Watchtower's failed prophecy that the world would end in 1975. Stephen Lett was the only witness in good standing left after that. Financial documents show that starting in 76, his extended family got into the real estate business, and so did Stephen Lett. Despite Stephen's brother Tim being worldly, he and his brother invest in real estate together. They own beachfront condos named after the James Bond film Moonraker, multiple investment properties in the millions of dollars that appear to be vacation homes. While Jehovah's Witnesses are encouraged to live as frugally as possible since the end is nigh, Lett has been able to pay off 2 $500,000 mortgages on waterfront properties. Based on documents in 2024, Lett has an income of at least $185,000 a year purely from his real estate side hustle. As the Blue Envelope points out, you also have to consider that Lett has 0 living expenses. The governing body live in a compound built and paid for by unpaid Jehovah's Witness laborers. The leaders' healthcare, housing, and meals are all free. But of course, Lett insists that none of the money lines anyone's pockets.
But for a certainty, any donations received do not line anyone's pockets.
And before we move on, this isn't important, but it is to me. Much of the Lett family property is in Alabama, and Lett's brother Tim has attempted to start 2 restaurants with a heavy focus on the Civil War South. You know, the traders who fought for the right to own black people as property. As faithful slaves, you might say.
Don't trust the faithful slave. He will mislead you.
Tim's first restaurant, which Lett was invested in, was called Ponderosa Plantation and had 26 authentic Civil War newspapers.
I'm going to ring this.
The dinner bell is finally ringing at Pondera Plantation in Lillian. It is packed with thousands of items owner Tim Lett has collected over the years.
Well, there are 26 Civil War newspapers in the whole building, the actual newspapers. A lot of history here,
particularly surrounding the Civil War.
So make of that what you will. And then his Confederate restaurant burns down, all that memorabilia lost, which is either a huge shame or a great insurance scam, hard to say.
I'm a pretty old guy, you know. Anybody need 2 acres of ground, you know, come see me. That's what I'm saying.
And I'm not making any allegations. This is a comedic channel, and comedy's legal again. Anyway, speaking of slave drivers, that's basically what cult leaders are, so let's get back to Stephen Lett. I've linked Phil's video in the description if you want more information into the nitty-gritty of Lett's money. But we need to move on. We've got an important thing to talk about. This guy's face. I know that sounds kind of mean, but, like, he brought it up.
Makes me think of an experience I had some 40 years ago when Susan and I were in the circuit work. A sister told me that her little 5-year-old son was looking in a mirror and making various expressions with his face and eyes. His mother asked, "What are you doing?" He said, "I can't do like Brother Lett. I'll never be a circuit overseer." Well, I'm sure he soon learned that voluminous facial expressions are not a requirement for circuit work. In fact, they could be a disadvantage. By the way, thank you for putting up with me all these years.
All right, I'm going to give some context and translation for Never JWs. He's using some group speak here. Before he was on the governing body, the board from Severance, Lett was a circuit overseer. A circuit overseer is sort of like a David Wallace from The Office, but for Jehovah's Witnesses, so you don't actually get paid. Well, as you can see from this performance we're watching, Stephen Lett is infamous inside and outside the organization for his exaggerated facial expressions and banjo from Banjo-Kazooie, dopey tone of voice. Even when I was a member, this was a topic of conversation. I mean, it's impossible to not notice what he's doing here. It's that thing that happens when we see a realistic-ish video game character or a CGI, digitally de-aged character in a Marvel or Star Wars movie, and our brain just goes, eh.
Is it possible for a Christian always to be rejoicing? Yes.
I think it might be evolution or something. I'm not a scientist, and also the uncanny valley thing is only a hypothesis, but there's something that just is not right about what we're seeing here. So some people thought, well, maybe he was in like a sign language congregation and was used to having overly exaggerated facial expressions. Maybe he had a stroke. This is what strokes do, right? It makes you talk like this.
What if you were tied to a chair and forced to watch the torture and execution of your most beloved child? That would be horrible.
Like, I remember one time talking to a faithful Jehovah's Witness sister in my congregation, older sister, and she, loved the organization. But she told me, I can't watch that man when he talks. I just have to listen, but I can't look at his face. There's something about it. And I was like, I know. Now, if you know anything about cult leaders, it's that they're very conscious of their image and how they're perceived. So I think it is notable that Stephen Lett is addressing the fact that his own face is kind of a topic of conversation. Like, he clearly knows that other people know.
Very interesting, is it not?
But that's not the interesting thing. The thing that's interesting is that I think Stephen Lett is trying to rewrite history here. Now, he calls them voluminous, although maybe that was just a word that was stuck in his head or something, because he uses that same word later on.
Because of Jehovah's voluminous generosity.
And call it voluminous if you like, Stephen Lett, but some might call it infantilizing. And yet Lett seems to be saying he's always been like this. He says even 40 years ago, a little kid was trying to imitate his voluminous facial expressions. And then he very sweetly and kindly and normally says, "Thanks for putting up with my weird quirks. I am as God made me." Paraphrasing. So Lett, I believe, is implying that this has always been his cross to bear. Torture stake, sorry. He just loves Jehovah so much that he can't help but talk like a creepy pervert for 40 years. Except, a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses have looked into this, actually, and maybe observed it at the time, because it's been observable. Stephen Lett did not always do this.
You can sometimes see the act slip in when he's being interviewed by someone else, especially before he started adopting this persona in public.
Never been sentimental toward material things. They were willing to move the headquarters from Pennsylvania to New York. They've been willing to sell buildings. They've been willing to buy buildings.
So I reject this anecdote, Stephen. I think you're lying. Just from my own observed experience, this was clearly a thing Lett started doing when he started to see his face more on Jumbotrons, and then it really got out of control when he started seeing himself on TV. I guess for some reason, he just thinks that this is good, at the very least, in the words of a truly wise old man.
You're talking about it. Well, that is true.
It gets attention. Lett knows people are talking about it, and he is surrounded by yes men who wouldn't dare criticize him because Christ our Lord wants us to see Stephen Lett instead of someone who isn't wealthy and absurd. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on why Lett does this. I believe Stephen Lett is trying to save face, as it were. Not too long ago, Stephen Lett gave a incredibly tone-deaf talk.
As a caution, we don't want to be theatrical in our speaking. That means we wouldn't want to use extreme gestures or dramatic expressions, overly theatrical, even theatrical. Why? Because now you end up drawing attention to yourself, don't you? Rather than to what we're teaching.
Like, of all messengers to deliver this message, they chose Rubberface himself. But now he's saying, oh, I've always been that way. I can't help it.
Thank you for putting up with me all these years.
I think Lett is trying to rewrite the past here, in more ways than one. Lett has said a lot of gross, hateful, and otherwise inappropriate things about children on JW Broadcasting over the years. For a change, I am not going to play goofy music or do Zooms because I think you'll see why.
Actually, you think about it, we're born as enemies of God. Sometimes you'll hear people say of a little baby, "Look at that little angel." But more accurate would be to say, look at that little enemy of God. Now we've discussed 3 negative traits of a young child that we want to avoid. If we had time, we could have discussed other negative traits to be avoided, such as children tend to have a short attention span. They're easily distracted. Their curiosity often gets them into trouble, and they generally need a lot of time and attention They're high maintenance.
Children are not born with the godly quality of love. In fact, because of imperfection, they're born with the opposite. Often a tendency to be selfish. They grab things, mine.
Little toddlers grab things and hold them tightly.
Mine.
Pretty bad. It really seems like Stephen Lett hates kids. And no, he is not a father. In fact, none of the current governing body members have any children. And that is arguably a little bit of a problem because they're constantly giving advice to parents who are raising children as Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, you could argue that, but you'd obviously be totally wrong. I think he has heard feedback on the way he talks about kids. It's been a topic of conversation. And this might surprise you if you've never been a witness, but Jehovah's Witnesses are encouraged to write their local branch office if they have questions or concerns that can't be addressed by a local elder. Watchtower often writes back. And this one time, Watchtower got a lot of letters in a short amount of time from Jehovah's Witness parents about materials that the group produces for children. They couldn't just respond individually with individual letters. This had to be addressed on camera to the Worldwide Brotherhood. And this happened twice within 6 months. It is rare for any legitimate criticism that members have to be addressed on camera, let alone the same thing twice in a matter of months. And you'll never guess who they chose to give this anti-child safety talk.
We might mention that we've had just a few parents write in expressing concern that some of our videos depict scenes that could have an effect on children who've been protected from anything even hinting at an act of violence. Parents, likewise, need to give their children a realistic idea of what we all will face in the near future.
But apparently, Jehovah's Witness parents did not find this to be an acceptable response to their concerns. Oh, that didn't make you feel better? Well, let's try again.
7 months later. If you recall, in the May 2020 JW Broadcasting monthly program, Brother Lett addressed the concern a few parents have expressed about some of our videos that depict biblical or modern-day situations. The concern expressed is that some scenes could have an effect on children who've been protected from all negative circumstances on TV.
Get over it. Your kids need to know how scary Armageddon's gonna be. And some scary stuff happens in the Bible, but it's true, so, what do you want us to do? Suffice it to say that over the past 10 years that the organization has been releasing videos on jw.org, Lett is consistently condescending and hateful towards children. And it seems that they got some letters about that. I think that this criticism got back to Stephen Lett, because this broadcast is really weird if it's just apropos of nothing, if this is just random stuff that Stephen Lett is bringing up for fun. But it makes a lot of sense if this is damage control for his own ego.
I'm reminded of the 6-year-old girl who said, "Thank you, Jehovah, for the resurrection hope. It is a very good idea."
He keeps going out of his way to mention all these positive interactions he's had with young ones.
I'm reminded of the 6-year-old girl who a sister told me that her little 5-year-old son, some of our young ones share what they look forward to. In fact, very young infants have been observed imitating facial expressions. That's amazing.
Okay, I know I said that children are born to be disobedient enemies of God, but now I'm saying that they're born to be imitators of God. And would a guy who hates children present a video like this? Max, go up!
Listen to what these young ones say about the paradise.
I can't even get into this. It's so horrible and sad. These poor kids are being used as props for a cult, and meanwhile their minds are being filled with fantasies and bigotry, and also filling the minds of Jehovah's Witness children. This guy's face. Little Jehovah's Witness kids have to watch this. It's like part of their worship. It is mandatory for children to watch this guy say stuff like this.
Jehovah loves you very much. The governing body loves you very much. They will not tickle your ears, perhaps like ones at school or in the neighborhood who don't really love you or have your best interest at heart.
They have to. It's the rules, principles. Sorry. I think there was another time in recent history when the governing body received a lot of letters about one certain talk. I can even give you a time frame. I think it was after the December 2022 152nd Gilead graduation. This is when Stephen Lett gave that ridiculous talk where he chastised others for using over-the-top gestures and facial expressions. I mean, not to be too dark or anything, but if I was Stephen Lett and my health was visibly deteriorating on camera constantly in front of everybody, and I was pretty sure that I was going to die soon, and I had some things on my mind about the way I'm perceived by the flock and what my legacy would be, I might be tempted to give one last talk where I address some of the criticisms that have bothered me, / weren't ever true. It is okay for me to use these gestures and facial expressions, even though I tell other people not to do it. And yes, I do like kids, and kids like me. They look up to me, they imitate my facial expressions. Maybe. I mean, I can't prove it. So just to be safe, I'll clarify that we were just in the conspiracy corner.
Welcome, Internet. I'm so happy to share with you this conspiracy theory.
Now before we go, I do have to go edgy atheist on you for one quick second. But you don't have to be an atheist to see my overall point. The governing body's role within Jehovah's Witnesses is to provide spiritual food at the proper time.
As was the case in the 1st century, the governing body today provides spiritual food, direction, and practical help for God's people around the world. Jesus has appointed that governing body to be the faithful and discreet slave.
They are the vessel through which Jesus Christ feeds his precious sheep.
Sheep?
So you would think that the arguments in favor of the existence of God would be the most compelling of all other religions on earth. At the very least, they would be different, unique. But stop me if you've heard this one before.
Think for a moment about the planet we live on. If the Earth were closer to the sun, all the water would boil off, and the planet would be a barren rock.
This one is so common that it has a name, the fine-tuning argument. You don't need Stephen Lett to hear this kind of crap.
If even one of these fundamental constants or quantities were to be altered by a hair's breadth, the universe would be life-prohibiting.
So witnesses think that they're the only ones who have access to this argument, and they don't think that any valid counter-arguments exist.
Only in Jehovah's organization could such a thing happen.
But really, Stephen Lett is just saying the same kind of thing that William Lane Craig is saying, or Kent Hovind, or any of the other identical white guys who say the exact same thing. I don't even really care about dealing with this argument right now because this video is not about that. Just wanted to point out that instead of this being unique spiritual food, it is in fact bog standard Christian slop. Bog slop. Try saying that one time slow. But then he gets into an argument that bothered me even as a witness. Oh, our bodies are so amazing.
The marvelous gift of our human bodies. Even in our imperfect state, as mentioned at Psalm 139:14, we are wonderfully made.
Isn't it brilliant how our skin is designed to heal when we cut, scrape, or bruise it?
Well, as a kid who was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at the age of 8, I did not find my body to be incredible. Now, like many Christian religions, witnesses simply believe that imperfection set in after the Garden of Eden. God didn't make us to grow old and die or get diseases. That's a thing that happens because of Satan or sin or something. My problem with this was always simple. Why would God design guts? Why would he design intestines and bladders and colons and rectums? Why did God make rectums? Explain that to me right now. I would watch a cartoon like Futurama, the way that Bender just throws shit into his stomach and like it catches on fire. Well, that could be how humans operate. We could just chompa and then immediately evaporate the food into energy, or however Bender works. That would be so much simpler than the slip and slide tangled mess of veins and guts that we have going on. Make humans Bender. Again, Mumba. Jehovah's Witnesses don't accept evolution at all. You know, most Christians get around this by just accepting that evolution is real, and God is just the force that set it in motion. But witnesses don't even believe that. They're like, nope, God thought about every other possibility, but what he settled on was that you go chompa, and then you poop out your butt. God wants you to chew with your nasty teeth and then swallow it down your nasty throat hole.
The stomach is where the real action begins.
And then it goes through a little slip and slide, chutes and ladders situation until it turns into poop.
Solid waste is characteristically brown and stinky.
That's what God wanted. He went through every single option in the whole universe, and that's the one that was best.
I forgot everything you said before Rectum!
That's mostly all I wanted to talk about. Everything that he said in this video was very weird and self-serving and gross. I'll say gross. But you know who's not gross at all, and who are not little enemies of God, are my patrons, who are probably scrolling. They ensure that I can include a bonus clip at the end of videos such as this one. But no, he didn't need to make you. Jehovah did not need to create you at all. He was totally happy being a lone wolf. He also did not need to make himself a girlfriend or a wife or anything like that. He went straight to making himself a son. He went straight into being a single father. And I emphasize on straight because God's not gay at all. He does watch all gay people do all gay things all the time, including me, including all the gay stuff I've done. God has seen it and watched it. Isn't it kind of weird that Jehovah God has seen way more gay sex than any gay man who has ever lived? I'm sorry, I don't know why. Why is this a part of the video? This is not even in my script. If it's not clear, I usually have a script, and then we'll just kind of not really read it much. Just kind of bounce off and go on tangents, and then cobble together a video where I'm like, I really should have just read the script.
I have a good job. I'm content. I'm needed. I hate the baby Jesus. I consider adulthood Jesus 1,000 times greater. And also, I hate the movie Inception. Why? Well, one thing about it, the dream is true. And also, I'm not smart enough.
That was not brought to you by artificial intelligence, just so you know. Bye.